We are back. I know it's been a hot minute, but I am so glad to be back. I am Cameo King, and this is the first show of the fall 23 season of the Good Girl Podcast. Woo! Cheers! I created this podcast because there wasn't a space for women to be themselves in every facet of their lives. The Good Girl Podcast offers that space to have conversations with a gutted truth without restriction. Join us every week to unpack your own set of questions and confessions in this good and safe space. So one thing about the Good Girl Podcast, or that's at the heart of this podcast, is that I love to unpack this false notion that you have to be society's idea of a good girl to be successful. And y'all know some of those ideas we are indoctrinated with: purity, modesty, Eurocentric beauty standards. You got to be quiet. You got to be submissive. You got to be ladylike. You got to be married with kids. I call all of that good femininity. It can be extremely harmful to women, especially those who fall outside of those standards. It can be extremely harmful to her worth, her well-being, and her ability to come into her full self. So we'll have a show every Wednesday at 6 p.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time. Yo! Dropping confessions that deconstruct good femininity. Last thing before I hop into the season opener, let's stay connected. We are on social media, and are y'all still on social media anymore? I feel like there has been a mass exodus of folk from all the socials, and if y'all haven't left, y'all are only on there like once a week. Anyway, if you're not on social media, but you're listening to this, whoop, somebody done sent this to you. Maybe you got an email. Maybe you didn't subscribe. Praise God. We passed the socials. But if you are not, there are ways that you can still, again, stay connected to us. You can get our emails. I promise y'all, we do not send emails because this is a one-woman shop. Hopefully, it'll begin to be a several-people shop. But I don't send emails consistently. Maybe you'll get an email about this. I think the last time I sent an email would have been maybe a year ago. And then we want to send you text, though, every week just to remind you that, hey, a show is out. So sign up. You can sign up through the link in the show notes. All right, so let's get on to this week's show. And this show, I think, was a little challenging for me because I felt that I lost my juice, right? And I couldn't pin it down. Like, what is it like to get me to a place where I felt comfortable, where I felt authentic, where I was giving you all something that you couldn't get anywhere else, something that was unique to me and unique to the show. And so I really wrote this show. And I'm gonna get to it, y'all. I promise y'all. I really wrote this show on my way. I was on a plane, and I really felt that God was like, Cameo, be honest. What is on your heart? What have you been dealing with? And so that's what y'all gonna get, right? So I wrote this on the plane. Think real deep, looking out the window. You know, the sun is shining. Anyway, here we go. So this past year, 2022, was interesting for me. Interesting in that I finally stepped into myself, who I am, who God predestined me to be. Not my full self, but I think it was more of myself than I have ever been. I made my boundaries clearer. I stood firm in who I was or who I am and what I wanted. I came to a better understanding and articulating my emotions. I challenged myself physically, taking on new roles at work, new endeavors, y'all. I had a first of its kind event. I want to call it historical. It was called Black Girl Day of Play. We had it last year in 2022 on the state's Capitol lawn here in Michigan, and about 1,500 people came out. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And people from all over the state and the country. We had some folks from New York. Yeah. Challenge. So again, an interesting year. All of these, in a sense, leveling me up. But it became more interesting because while I was leveling up interpersonally, there was also fallout in other areas like relationships, right? Some were doing really well. Some have yet to come back together. And some were even birthing something that I had been yearning for. So there was a lot of motion in the ocean in my life. There is very little stability, and everything was transitioning and changing. And even with all these things happening, I still had a challenge with one of the hardest things that I have been asked to do and asked to do consistently. And that is surrender and surrendering all. Now, when I first hear the word surrender, it often feels like an act of giving up. It feels like weakness. And the fact that I was born and raised in a blue-collar family in Detroit, the mantra of hard work runs deep. And to add to that, being a part of the legacy of slavery, that there is this idea that has been ingrained in me to never give up. You know, if your ancestors went through what they went through, I know you can get through this. Don't give up. And so you have those things as the foundation. And on top of that, we are inundated with this idea of never surrender or keep going, especially to reach a set goal. We hear it from the greats even. We literally see it play out on a national stage every day. I mean, American singer and Emmy Award-winning actress Sheryl Lee Ralph, who had been in the business since the 70s, y'all. The 70s. I wasn't born. I wasn't a thought. She's been in the business since the 70s. Her career is skyrocketing. Leslie Jones, the comedian, she's been in the business since the 80s, and some of us are just coming to know her work. She was recently a guest host on The Daily Show. And on top of all this, every other Instagram post telling you not to give up, right? So we hear it and we see it all around. So the idea of surrendering seems like something only the weak ones do. Something that is an indicator that either I didn't want it bad enough, if I gave up, if I surrendered, or that I simply didn't have what it takes. But in order to talk about surrender fully, you have to talk about control and God. Because for me, that's where the tussle lies, right? That's me and God, boom, 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 tussling, right? Because questions that cross my mind, I'm like, God, so I'm just going to go after what I want and you're going to help me? Or are you going to make this happen and I just chill? Are we working together? What is going on, right? There's this tussle that happens directly at the intersection of control and surrender. So I was having a conversation with one of my mentors. I shared an internal dialogue I continuously have, one that's filled with competing thoughts about who is leading this thing called life. The internal dialogue was my attempt to find balance or at least some consistency of momentum with how God moves when it comes to my desires for my life. I shared a beautifully penned line from the artist Gnarls Barkley that always brings me back to reality, or better said, back to God. So if y'all know me, I'm about to share the line. But if you know me, I love to sing. But loving to sing and having the ability to sing well are two different things. But I'm going to do it anyway. So here we go. So y'all probably already know what line I'm talking about. But he goes, who do you think you are? Ha, 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 bless your soul. You think you're in control? So I'm going to stop there. I'm not. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. And I didn't really sing from my heart. And let me tell y'all this. If y'all ever hear me sing and it sounds amazing, it sounds good, please know that the Spirit of God is moving, and that is your opportunity to catch your blessing. Because, baby, the amount of times that I've tried, y'all. I've tried to sing well. I can hold some notes, some. Nonetheless, let me get back focused. Anyway, when I shared the line, who do you think you are? Ha, 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 bless your soul. You think you're in control. When I shared that with my mentor, I thought he was going to immediately understand, my perspective and understand this tussle that I have in my mind and give the affirming, yes, Cameo, I get it. But instead he responded, yeah, no, I don't know who that is. I said, anyway, the point, like, humble me. The point of me sharing that with him was to illustrate this dichotomy of our existence, especially those of us who have been striving for something other than what we are experiencing. and those of us with the belief of an all-powerful, all-knowing, sovereign God. And the truth is that many of us have this inconsistent, wavering walk with God when it comes to deciding what we truly control. And so there are two competing thoughts that keeps us here. First thought, the overbearing yet real experience that we have control. Control over how our lives turn out, control over our destiny, control over achieving certain outcomes. And let me be clear, that makes total sense. I have a level of control over my health and quality of life as I age, right? If I eat well and exercise, 9 out of 10, my quality of life is going to be great. I have a level of control over my lifestyle when I intentionally prepare and go after and excel in a certain career that pays well, or if I just simply manage my money well. Also, something real simple, if I'm not out here boinking folks, swamping bodily fluids and girding up my loins, I am exercising a level of control over whether or not I will be someone's parent. So yes, I get control. Second thought, a sovereign God, aka you ain't in that much control. Things we can't control, like where we are born, our physical attributes, a pandemic that completely shifted the economic and social systems of the world as we know it, a serendipitous encounter on a plane that leads to love, a new job, or your 6-figure contract. God's sovereignty is timing, connection, and experiences that develop us. And I ask, do I really wield my divine power and the earth and its inhabitants respond to it? That sounds really good, doesn't it? All right, I just show up and the earth responds. And social media even backs this idea up with like this idea of manifestation. Like you say what you want, you go after what you want, and you deny everything else. And let me say something. There's actually biblical text that aligns with that. It says, the earth groans and waits patiently for the revealing of its sons. The earth is literally waiting to respond to you. The revealing of its sons, the children of God. But oh, there's a caveat. The word revealed. Who and what is doing this revealing? What starts the revealing process? Can I just reveal myself? And because we are an ever-evolving people, which self does God cause the universe to respond to? I think about those Disney movies when the girl is walking around and all the birds and the fish and the plants and everything is responding to her presence. The lack of control and God's sovereignty is with us all the time. It lives in our existence, and we are snapped back to reality, to our fragile humanity, when it sends us this little reminder via uncontrollable circumstances that beg the question, do you think you're in control? So my answer to the contentious relationship between control and God's sovereignty is surrender. Cue singers. I surrender all to be my blessed Savior. Surrender is succumbing to something greater, something that has power over your situation, relinquishing control to something higher. Surrender for me looks like tearing down this image of how my life was going to play out, whether it was the day, the week, the year, or the next 30 years. It is letting go of this beautiful idea that I have for myself of where I wanted to live, at what age this was going to happen or that was going to happen, when and if I was going to get married or have kids, what my relationships would look like, what my career would look like. It looks like letting that go. And I think letting that go is hard for some of us, especially a lot of us who quote unquote played by the rules, right? Leading back to what I said initially, those of us who have been told that because we were a good girl or because we were a good guy, we are due these things. That's not true, y'all. Being good is not the pathway to success. And I also want to add that surrendering is hard, not only because of that, but because of the backdrop that we do have control. Imagine being told your entire existence that working is the way to get to your goal, that being good is the way to get to your goal. And you do that. You work, right? You follow these rules for years towards a goal. And you do see some progress, but you don't get the type of progress you're looking for, or you don't get it in the area that you really want, right? It works in some areas of your life, and it even seems like it's working for others. But what I want to offer you today, I do want to offer you a different type of surrender. You are actually surrendering to your faith that God has got you, that God is sovereign, that God is intentional, that God knows your desires, that God is good, and God is a good God that is good to you, and that God knows a lot more than I do, than what we know about our healing, about our ultimate satisfaction, about our desires, and what is going to get us there, about what is going to happen in the world tomorrow, about who we will need to become to take full hold of what is in front of us. What it doesn't mean, let me be clear, it doesn't mean you don't work. It doesn't mean you just stop. It means posturing your heart that God is leading, that there is an intricate dance between God and an individual. You know, when two people are dancing, right? There tends to be a lead, but you need both people to follow and to make this dance happen, whether it is the hand on the hip or the hand on the waist, whether it is coming to know your dance partner, that this is where they're leading you, and trusting your dance partner and knowing your dance partner's move, and even knowing when your dance partner is like, it's tap out, I'm tired, right? It means remembering that we only hold so much control. It means remembering that we are partnering, that we are dancing with God. It means releasing yourself from the bondage of carrying out God's task. That was a big one. It means releasing yourself from the bondage of carrying out God's task. Now, me having my relationship with God definitely will look different from yours, but I'm just sharing, right? I know I may have been prompted to do something, but I have never been prompted to be responsible for the result of that task. I don't think God has ever told me, you have to win, right? It is your job to win. You got to make that business hit 6 figures. You got to make that podcast have 6,000 listeners per episode. It hasn't been my experience. I don't know if it's somebody else's experience, because God may be working with them differently, but that hasn't been my experience. Now, God may say, take care of that person, or love on my people, or give that person X, money, whatever. But I've never experienced the Spirit calling me to make something grow. Does the word not say one plants, another waters, and God gives an increase? I am not responsible for the increase. You are not responsible for the increase. I am offering you today to surrender that responsibility of the increase. Surrender that back to God. You are not responsible for your idea, not God's idea, your idea of the success of a thing. Thank you so much for listening to the Good Girl Podcast. That's what I have for this week. As always, share, right? If this hits you someplace, right? Share this with somebody. We will have some amazing shows. Next week, we're going to talk about friendship. I recorded the friendship show actually last summer. So I don't know if everything I said is still relevant, but we gonna see. And we may go live about it. So thank you so much. And you are listening to the Good Girl Podcast.